Welcome to the Justin Strawn podcast. I am your host, Justin Strawn. Glad to be with you today on a Monday morning after a big weekend of baseball for Mississippi State. They had some other things going on as well. Don't really want to talk about those other things too much, but we will talk about them as well. I don't have a whole lot to talk about on the entertainment front. I will discuss a few things. I'm a little bit behind this morning, so I'm not probably going to be able to go quite as long as I would like, but I do want to get a quick show in. Make sure we discuss some of the things that happened over this past weekend. If you have not followed on Twitter, on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all those places, I would really appreciate it if you did. You could do me a huge favor by doing that. If you haven't, like I said, just go over there and look me up. You should be able to find me pretty easily. Justin Strawn. If you type my name in, it should pop me up pretty easily. So you should be able to find me there. Also, if you are listening on a podcast catcher of some sort, whether it be Apple, whether it be Spotify, if you can rate me on all those places, if you can add a review on Apple, those help as well. So like I said, I could really use your help in getting the podcast out and running with other people simply by following on all of the places. So let's go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about the baseball team. The baseball team had a really good weekend. I know it ended on a sour note. I know that the Bulldogs should have won their game against UCLA. We'll talk about that in a second. But overall, though, it's still a really good weekend. I don't know what the polls are saying. I don't know if any of the new polls have come out yet. Normally, they come out right about this time when, as I'm recording, they normally come out somewhere between 7 and 8. My guess is Mississippi State might move up to number 3 or 2 in the D1 baseball poll. It's possible. I don't know that they will, but they might. We'll see. I don't know. We'll just have to kind of wait and see what happens when they release their polls here this morning. Other than that, like I said, a really good week for Mississippi State baseball. The Bulldogs went to Arlington this past weekend. They had a tough matchup on Friday against Arizona State, who had a really good pitcher. I can't remember his name, Carlin or something like that. Like I said, I don't remember what his name was. But the guy was really dealing. He was having a great game for the most part. And then he either started cramping up. I don't really know exactly what happened there. And he had to come out of the game. The Bulldogs were starting to get to him a little bit. And once he came out of the game, Garrick Fry hits the 3-run bomb. Mississippi State goes up 4-0. And for the most part, that game was out of reach. On Saturday, the Bulldogs took on Virginia Tech and did pretty much what we thought they would. They had a chance to run rule them, and they gave up some runs there in the bottom half of the 8th, and they ended up giving up a few more in the bottom half of the 9th and ended up winning, I think 15-8 was the final score. And then that led us to Sunday, where Mississippi State took on UCLA. The Bulldogs end up losing in 10 innings, 8-7. And like I said, we're going to talk about that 9th inning here in just a little bit. But for the most part, like I said, a really good weekend. The Bulldogs took on a good Arizona State team, and they ended up beating them. Like I said, a lot of what Arizona State is going to do this year will be dependent upon how well they do on Friday night, because they do have a really good starting pitcher, and he gave the Bulldogs fits. But one of the things that we saw from this Bulldog team is there's no easy outs. He was having to work incredibly hard to get every single one of those Bulldog hitters out. He was having to work incredibly hard. And I think this weekend really confirmed what most of us have thought going into this year, that the Bulldogs lineup is going to be it's just going to be torture on pitchers going into this season. There are no easy outs in that lineup. There's nobody that you can just look at that lineup and say, yeah, you've got a weak spot here. You don't, because the guys that are out there, the 9 that are penciled in for the lineup, O'Connor could put in 6 more. This lineup could be 15. This batting work is 15 players deep. If you want to have a bad game, if you're not feeling it one day, it could cost you your starting spot, because there's another guy sitting there behind you waiting and chomping at the bit to get in the lineup and prove that he can play. So that's one of the great things that Mississippi State has going with this lineup this year, is the players just don't have any opportunity to take a day off. They've got to put their best effort in and day out. Now, that doesn't mean that if somebody has an over game, like Ace Reese had an over 5 day on Friday, that doesn't mean that Coach O'Connor's going to sit somebody who goes over for one day. But if they get into an extended slump, he's probably going to have to sit somebody and put somebody else out there because he's got other guys who can contribute and who can play for this team. So that's the thing that I was just very impressed by this weekend. Is it basically it confirmed what so many of us have thought about this Mississippi State baseball team in 2026 is the lineup is incredibly deep, just tons of talent, tons of depth, and trying to get through this lineup unscathed is going to be very, very difficult for any pitching staff. And that remains true. I mean, Mississippi State, I think the best example is that, I know they put up 15 runs or however many runs it was on Saturday, but the Sunday game against UCLA, I think really showcased that depth and showcased what they're capable of as a lineup because they end up going down 3-0. And lots of times when you get down by more than 2 runs, a lot of people think, oh, well, this game's over. There's no way that they're coming back. Mississippi State comes back. They end up tying the game. They end up taking the lead 4-3, and then they get an insurance run off the Noah Sullivan home run in the bottom half of the 8th. But then they give up. They get the 2 outs. They have a hit by pitch. And then I don't remember who it was for UCLA that hits the 2-run bomb. I mean, it was a no doubt or two. It was just a bad place that Ben Davis put that pitch, and it was gone. So let's go ahead and talk, though, about the Sunday game. Mississippi State should be, I think, 12-0. I think that's what I think they play 12 games. I can't remember. But they should be 12-0. They should. They were robbed. I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you anything different that they were robbed. Now, I will say this. I don't know what Coach O'Connor said after the game. I'm sure he met with media, and my guess is he's probably told them, there were 1,000 of other things that they could have done differently that could have resulted in a different outcome of that game besides one blown call on a 3-2 count in the bottom of the 9th. Because if you didn't watch the game, Mississippi State loads the bases up with just 1 out. Aiden Teal is at the plate. The count goes full, and the pitcher for UCLA, he throws a pitch that is inside. I'm pretty sure Aiden Teal's left-handed. It's inside. There's no getting around it. The StatCast or Strike Zone, whatever they have it on their particular broadcast, it showed it was off the plate, and it was pretty clearly off the plate. It was a really bad call, and I was having to watch it without the sound because I didn't pay for Flow College Sports this weekend, but somebody found a pirated link on YouTube and I watched it on that. So shout out to whoever it was that put that up on YouTube. I appreciate you. But I was watching without sound because I had a whole bunch of other things going on. And so I was trying to multitask. And Aiden Teal's reaction, the way he starts jumping up and down, I thought he was jumping up and down out of celebration. No, but he was jumping up and down out of frustration because he really felt like that pitch should have been called a ball, and it should have, and he ends up striking out as a result. And then the very next hitter, I don't remember who it was that followed him, he grounds out to second base, and we go into the 9th. Now, like I said, Coach O'Connor is probably going to say that there's 1,000 other things that they could have done differently, that could have gone a different way, that they could have done better, and the game would have had a different outcome. And he's correct. If you hit 6 batters, if you just walk the 4 guys, if that's all you do, if that's the only free bases you give up, Mississippi State in all likelihood wins that game. That's probably just the way it is. But when you hit 6 batters and then you walk 4 big guys on top of it, you give away 10 free bases, you're going to end up in a situation where one bad call can ruin the game and decide the game for you, because it did. If anybody's trying to tell you that one call didn't cost them the game, I get where they're saying that. Like I said, there's other things that could have happened differently. If you had just not given up so many free bases, you probably do win that game. But the problem is, if that call is correct, the winning run walks across the plate and the Bulldogs win. So like I said, that's the reason why you can't say that call didn't cost them the game. Now, big picture, they'll be fine. The one thing that you just didn't want to see happen this weekend is they go to UCLA and State meet in Arlington, and the Bulldogs end up just getting blown away. That's the one thing you could not have happened this weekend. You had an opportunity to win that game. You probably should have won that game, but things just didn't break your way. Look, you've proven to yourself that if this team had any doubt that they were among one of the best teams in the country, I think this game dispelled that. I think you can make the case that Mississippi State has had the best season so far here early in 2026. I know you're going to say, well, UCLA just beat them. UCLA has two losses to two bad teams. Mississippi State only has one loss to a good team. I don't think it's going to propel them to number one and past UCLA. I don't think that at all. But if you're talking about who's had the better season, I would say State's had the better season. Most LSU got a bad loss or two on their resume, maybe just one bad loss. Like I said, every other top team, with the exception of maybe Texas. Texas is probably the one team that you could say has had a better start to their year than Mississippi State. There's not a whole lot of other teams out there that can say they've gotten off to as good a start as the Bulldogs have. They just can't. I talked about on Friday with the Major League Baseball season getting ready to get started, the ABS system, because I saw a lot of people saying, bring on the robo-umps. Yeah, we're not getting robo-umps in college baseball for a while. It's just not going to happen. They're introducing the ABS system in Major League Baseball this year, but it's not going to happen for college baseball for a while. It's just not. If you haven't done any research or reading into what it takes to get the ABS system implemented in Major League Baseball, you'll see that it's just not going to happen in college baseball anytime soon. Now, could it happen at like the conference level? Sure. I wouldn't be surprised if the SEC tried to find some way to implement it for conference only games. Could it happen like at the NCAA tournament? It could. They might find a way to implement it there, because what has to happen is you have to have all the cameras and all that type of stuff set up, but you also have to have sensors on home plate. You have to have every single player that is going to be, their balls and strikes are going to be judged on who's batting. They have to be measured to a precise amount. Major League Baseball players, they have to show up to get measured, and they had to showed up to get measured at a certain time between, I think, 9 and 10 o'clock in the morning. And the reason they do it at that time is because apparently you shrink by a few millimeters throughout the course of the day. And like when you go to sleep at night, you get those millimeters back and your body's constantly adjusting. I did not know that, but I found this out when I was reading about the ABS system. But so you have to get measured. They have to get measured twice. If they are more than a few millimeters off, not inches, not centimeters, millimeters. If the two measurements are more than just a few millimeters off from each other, they do a third one, and then they just take an average of the three. It is incredibly precise how you have to get. And there's a very expensive precision tool that you have to measure people with on this. And like I said, every single player has to get measured. This isn't going to happen in college baseball anytime soon. Like I said, maybe at the SEC level, if SEC wants to invest in it, because there are some teams like Mississippi State, like LSU, like Ole Miss, that actually do make money off of college baseball, then maybe they might want to introduce it for their conference games only. And like I said, maybe for the NCAA tournament, every team that is going to be in it, they might implement it for that, where they come in, all the players get measured on the day they arrive for the tournament, and then you implement it that way. But ABS isn't going to be solving this problem for college baseball anytime soon. And the college baseball umps are not good. If you're a Major League Baseball fan and you want to talk about how bad Major League Baseball umpires are, if you've never watched a college baseball game, it's even worse. They miss so many calls there. And the problem with college umpires is they're just not consistent. That was the one thing that we always talk about in baseball with umpiring, is when you're calling balls and strikes, please just be consistent. Please just have the same strike zone. Even if it's outside, if it's inside, whatever it might be consistent with that. Make sure that one pitch that's called a strike is always called a strike, and it's not a ball half the time, a strike half the time. And unfortunately, college umpires just aren't. They are not consistent at all. And I would love for them to be able to get the ABS system for college baseball, but I don't see it happening anytime soon. I really don't. But we can always hope and pray, but we'll just have to kind of wait and see on that. So, look, Mississippi State has another tough challenge on Tuesday. They go to Southern Miss, and basically, if you win that game, and my guess is Southern Miss is probably going to be a top 10 team when the polls are released this morning. But if you win that game, you've got a top 10 matchup And if you can win that one and then take care of business this weekend, you're going into the Arkansas series with just one loss. And that's a really good place to be. Arkansas, look, they're a good team. They're talented, but they had a rough week. They lost to Arkansas State in the midweek, and then they lost to UT Arlington on Friday. I think they won the last two games of their series, but they had a rough week. And, you know, there's a lot of teams that have rough weeks this week, and it wouldn't be, you feel it's probably as good as you have at any point about this Bulldog team having success. The one area of concern coming out this weekend is probably the depth of the pitching staff. I think you've got some really good front end guys. Your Friday night and Saturday night, I think you're good with Valencius or Valencius. I don't remember which one. There's two brothers that have the same last name and they are pronounced differently. I don't know why that is. And for whatever reason, I can't remember the Friday night starter off the top of my head. Sorry, guys. I'm terrible with names. But you feel great with those two guys. I think you feel pretty good with Duke Stone on Sunday as well. I know he didn't go deep into the game, but when you start getting to Sunday, if you can get, around 5 innings out of your guy and give up, 2 or 3 runs on for a Sunday starter, that's pretty good. And that's about what you want from your Sunday starter. And he should be able to do that without too much of an issue throughout most of this season. So I'm not too terribly worried about him. You start getting into the depth of that bullpen, that's where we start seeing some issues. I mean, Mississippi State gave up some junk runs at the end of both Friday and Saturday. Jack Bauer, he gets into the game. He's going to be good. He really is. He's got the stuff, and we have seen it. But the problem is he still doesn't have the command or the control over it. And if you threw 101 miles per hour too, it might be hard to control it. But like I said, that's probably the only real concern that I have. Is just the depth of the pitching staff. But Mississippi State has the lineup where if they need to just out slug you, they can do it. So, all right, let's talk real quick about the basketball team. I don't want to spend much time, but basically, I've said on this podcast that I'm not calling for Chris Jans' job, and I'm still not. I'm not going to call for his job, but it is getting more and more difficult to have that position going forward because Chris Jans, unfortunately, man, this team has quit. This team has just quit on him, and they don't want to be there. They are done. They are playing as poorly as ever. They get smoked by Missouri, a Missouri team that is not good. I mean, they're good, but they're not great. I mean, there's no reason why a Missouri team should beat them by like 25 or 20 points or however big the margin of victory was on Saturday. At home. There's no reason for that. And I feel bad for Chris Jans because I like the guy. He took a team to the tournament his first year here that had no business being in the NCAA tournament. They just didn't. They weren't that good. They weren't that talented, but he got so much out of them, a lot more than most other people could have. And I feel bad for the fact that he's going to be put on the hot seat next year because this team is not good at all. And like I said in the past, if we're relying on the transfer portal to fix this for Mississippi State, that's dangerous because up until this point, very little has worked in the Bulldogs' favor in terms of the transfer portal. It's the reason why the Bulldogs aren't doing well this year is because they had to rely heavily on the portal, and a lot of the guys that they were counting on just aren't playing that well. Jaden Epps has been pretty good, but he hasn't been great here recently. Achor has had moments. Quincy Valor has been terrible. I mean, he's had a game or two that's been pretty decent, but he's just been absolutely awful, and that's probably the biggest reason why this team just is not good. But like I said, I feel bad for him because he's a good coach. I really think he is, but he can't get anything out of these guys. And that's a problem. It really is a problem. And I know there are talks about, he's possibly going to bolt for greener pastures next season. I don't get where that's coming from because at this point, he's never finished with a record better than 500 in a Power Four conference. That hasn't happened. He's gone 8-10 the past 3 years in the SEC play, and he's going to be far worse than that this year because I don't see any way he's going to beat Georgia or Florida. But like I said, there's talk about him going somewhere else, and I just don't know who would want. If you're turning your program over to him, what are you banking it on that he can take your Power Four program to the next level? Now, if you're talking about a Group of Five program or a mid-major program, that might be different. You can argue that would be different. But if you're talking about some Power 4 job that opens up, why would you, as an athletic director, turn it over to a guy who's never finished better than 500 in conference play? I just don't see how that's going to be the case. So, like I said, I hope he sticks around, and I hope that he can turn this thing around next year, because then we're starting all over again in basketball. And it's getting old, it's getting tiring, and I don't know what else to make of it. Like I said, I love Mississippi State basketball. I do. I love Mississippi State basketball, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't worked out here recently for the Bulldogs on the hard court. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to another Mississippi State team, the softball team. They finished with 17 wins in the month of February. They always start a weekend before the baseball team. So the baseball team always starts their season the second weekend in February. The softball team starts their weekend the first weekend in February, but they end up winning the most games that they have ever won in the month of February. They are 17-2, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They lost one game in the Tiger Classic against Clemson, but they won the second one. I don't know. It's a weird tournament. I don't really know exactly how it works, but they won that event. That's all I know. I saw a graphic showing where they actually won it. But I mentioned this in the show on Friday. This team needs to figure out a way to host. We're getting ready to start. I think they start SEC play this coming weekend. This is going to be the big challenge for them going into this weekend. Is they've got to step up and find a way to be like top half of the SEC. So like being fifth or sixth or somewhere around there. Because if they can be like in the top half of the SEC standings, then they are probably going to end up as a regional host. I would love for them to be one of those top 8 seats. I mean, that is very much on the table. They were number 12 coming into this week. I don't know what's going to happen to their ranking after this week is over, but I would love to see the Mississippi State softball team get a chance to host a regional and put News. I think it's called News. I always struggle with its pronunciation, but News Park on display, because it's a great stadium. It really is. They really invested into that stadium and put it in enhancing the softball program. So I would love for them to be rewarded with that. And it just makes it a lot easier to get to a super regional, and then to possibly host a super regional, and then to possibly make it to Oklahoma City to play in the Women's College World Series. Like I said, I would love to see that happen. I think this team is as good as they've had pretty much in all of my time, but they've got a really good team. I think they've got the chance to pull this thing out and make it to as a regional host. And if they can, then they've got a chance to play the second and third weekends, the second weekend of the postseason, then possibly make it into the College World Series. This team has the talent to do it. They're just going to have to actually prove it on the field, because it's going to be tough. Like I said, softball is hard and it is difficult in the SEC. It's just it's one of the most competitive conferences of any sport that there is, because these SEC softball teams, they get the best players, and there's a reason why you often hear about SEC softball teams being some of the best in the country. So, all right, the only thing entertainment wise, I haven't been to a movie in a long time. It's been since I've been to a movie theater. I need to go back. I miss it, but there hasn't really been a whole lot out that I wanted to get to a movie theater to check out. There were a few things in December, but I never got a chance to make it. It's hard to get to the movie theaters in December. But we've got a few I think this could be a pretty good year for movies. There's always this talk about, the state of movies, the state of the box office, and, what's going to happen to movies, because we just don't get the huge box office numbers that we once did. A movie breaking $1 billion doesn't happen that often anymore. It used to happen quite a bit, but it doesn't happen that often anymore. But I think we've got the chance to have some really pretty big weekends. The first movie I really want to see is coming up in March. I don't remember what day in March it comes out, but it is Project Hail Mary. This looks really, really good. It's based off of a book, same guy who wrote The Martian, that was done in film a few years ago. It starred Matt Damon. I don't remember when it came out, but Project Hail Mary is the first one that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Sci-fi, looks great. If you haven't seen the trailer, you might not want to. They put a couple of spoilers from the book, from what I understand. I have not read the book, but they put a couple of spoilers in it that some people were kind of disappointed in, for people who have read the books. Like I said, if you haven't seen the trailers, I would recommend not seeing the trailers at this point. But I'm very excited to see it. The Super Mario Brothers movie. That movie is going to make $1 billion. Super Mario Galaxy is coming out. I love I'm a huge video game fan. I will go see it. I will be there with all the kids seeing it. I have no problem with that whatsoever. I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be fun. The first one, it was not a great, spectacular film, but they really got the vibe of what a Super Mario Brothers movie should have been. It felt like Super Mario Brothers. And that's what you're supposed to do when you make a movie on a video game. You're supposed to make it feel like the video game. And they did a great job of that in the first one. And I expect them to do that with this second one as well with Super Mario Galaxy. It should be a good one as well. Some other big movies coming out this year that have me looking forward to. I'm looking forward to The Odyssey. That's going to be great. I'm a huge Christopher Nolan fan. I love what he does directorially. Can't wait to see what he's doing with this story because it is one of my favorite stories. I love Greek mythology. I love everything that's associated with it. So I'm really excited about it. I'm hoping that it's going to just blow my socks away, and I expect it to. Also, some other big movies. At the end of the year, we got 2 big ones coming out on the same day, which I hate. I haven't been to 2 movies in the same day in a long time, but this might be the first time in a while that I do it. Avengers Doomsday is coming out. It's the next Avengers film. And Dune Part 3, I think that's what they're calling it. I don't think they're calling it Dune Messiah. It will be coming out as well. And I'll be very interested to see how that does. Unfortunately, I really don't like the fact that Dune bought the exclusive rights to the IMAX theaters, to the IMAX screens for that. I would have liked to have seen. I don't go to an IMAX screen, but there is a movie theater close to me that has a much bigger. It's called the Movie Experience Theater. I don't remember, but Malco is the local theater of the Memphis area, and they have what's called their MXT experience at a theater that's close to me. And I'd hope to see both of them in that particular theater, but because neither Disney nor Warner Brothers is willing to budge off of that date in December, only one of them can have it, and Dune has bought out the rights for it, and I really hate the fact that they did that, because like I said, I would have liked to have seen both of them on the biggest screen possible, but that's just not going to happen this time around. So, all right, guys, it's time for me to do my actual job, so I appreciate you guys coming in. Until next time, we'll talk to you then.